Do you have like a goal in mind? Like you mentioned, you want to go nationwide. Is there a certain number that you're looking to acquire, or just as much as possible?
Yeah, as much as possible, but in terms of a number, I'd like to go minimum of 100.
Wow. Okay. You don't do things by half measure.
No, hundreds or like just starting with 100. Even when I was like first starting out, I was like, oh, maybe I should lower that goal. But why not? Why not dream big? Long story short, I'm a entrepreneur, businessman from Melbourne, Australia. I am 26 years old right now. So I guess within my relatively short span on this earth, I feel like I've achieved a lot of things that many people, from what I can see in my peer group, would deem as a lot and very impactful so far. And I feel like I'm just getting started. So what I'm doing is I'm building my company, JC Health Group. We're building a national healthcare organization, and what I mean by that is we're looking to buy and build clinics all around Australia, across the whole land. I think clinical healthcare is one of the most impactful ways to really get in front of people and make that impact in people's lives directly. From practitioner to the individual and ultimately the community. And I guess a follow on from what I'm doing, just sharing my wisdom as I build my company. I love helping people. I love teaching what I know. So it just makes sense for me to keep consulting and coaching people along my journey. So that's what I'm focused on. That's me in a nutshell.
Great. Yeah, thank you. You are a business owner, correct?
Yes,
How old were you when you acquired your business?
I was 24, 25. So, yeah, something like that.
That seems awfully young to like acquire a business. Were you like one of the youngest that you know of to do this?
Well, look, I've seen and heard across the internet there's 16-year-olds, 18-year-olds doing it. Um, I've always wanted to get into business, so just seeing all these kids like making so much money online, and then hearing about yeah, teenagers and just even 20-year-olds getting into, I guess, what I would say real business, brick and mortar business. I figure, wow, if these kids can do it, surely I can do it. Like I've got experience, I've got know-how, and I just, I actually just quit my job and said, hey, let's do this.
Yeah, that's great. And that so you've been in it for about 2 years, over 2 years now.
Yeah, with my company, JC Health Group, like acquiring clinics and businesses, relatively short stint so far. So yeah, close to 2 years now.
Okay. And what was the early thought process like when you're thinking about what type of business to acquire, where to acquire it? Could you walk us through your mindset in those early stages?
Yeah, so getting into business, I knew I wanted to do something impactful. That was number one. I considered things like copywriting, like marketing, like digital services, which is my forte, my background, like what I've studied, what I've learned. But I just figure that's still working for someone. That's still helping other people build their businesses, which is part of my passion. But ultimately, I wanted to build something for myself. So that was first and foremost impact. Um, so following on from that train of thought, what is the most impactful thing that I could do? Um, I guess just a bit more context. I was working at a bank. I saw the in retail banking. I saw the power of getting in front of someone face to face, them coming to me with problems and trusting me to give them the solutions. And just over enough time, I thought, wow, so these brick and mortar places, these places like banks, law firms, accounting firms, healthcare clinics, people come in with a problem and trust wholeheartedly these professionals who have studied, who have got the licenses, got the qualifications. And I figure, what's an industry I'm passionate about? So I thought, I'm always been passionate about health and fitness, wellness. It's like, okay, let's go healthcare. Um, and I dived right in. Healthcare, tying that impact and personal like accountability and um, just direct impact. I was like, all right, clinics. Let's do clinics. Let's get into clinics, buy clinics, partner with clinics, however I could have. And yeah, I found the best way, or like the best way to make the impact was to own and train clinicians to deliver that service. Because I'm not a practitioner myself, I'm not a doctor. I can't deliver that service myself.
So you follow your passion, and then once you acquire, you figure out what are the missing pieces, and whose shoulder do I have to tap on in order to fill these gaps that I can't fill myself. Is that right?
Yeah, I guess so. Like, because I'm not a clinician, like, I'm young, I don't have the business experience, I've never bought a business before. Like, the first thing I did was approach people who have been there, done that. So I've got a board of directors above me who have a gazillion years of experience across law, finance, M&A, healthcare. Um, so my first step really was to, okay, I found my industry, I found my vehicle. What are the problems in this industry? I presented a case. I went out to these people, reached out. I said, hey, this industry's got these problems. I'm passionate about it. I'm going to fix it. Do you want to help me? Do you want to join me? So that was my first steps.
How big is your board? How many people are on it?
I've got five. There's five of us now, including me. Yeah. So we've got a couple of advisors, but the board, yeah, I've got a chairman, a legal guy, finance guy, and a couple of healthcare people.
And are they all based in Melbourne?
They are all based in Melbourne. So
Okay.
I've considered going interstate and whatnot, but I'm big on face to face. I'm big on handshakes, eye to eye. Let me see you. I'll show you who I am. I'll show you what I'm really. I'll show you my energy in person. And I like to build
Yeah,
trust.
yeah.
Yeah,
Do you ever think to yourself like it's amazing, like what I'm doing?
yeah. I never thought I was gonna do something like this. Like, I always knew at some point in my life that I would, but I never thought I'd be able to do it so young with so little experience, so little resources, and just go out there and chase my dreams and make it happen.
I mean, if you walk back kind of like the way you described it to me, like if you were to go to someone and say like, I want this job, they're like, oh, do you have any experience? You're like, nope. How old are you? You tell them, and it's like, I don't know, like a decade younger than the average business owner by acquisition. And here you are, and it seems like you're kind of thriving. You said you followed your passion, and you have the self-awareness to know that it's good to have a board, benefit from their network and expertise and experience, and it seems to be working really well for you, and you're like off to the races, off to more acquisitions. It sounds like that's really amazing. It can't all have been smooth sailing though. Like what were some of the surprises or challenges that you faced in the last couple of years?
The so buying in terms of buying a business, especially with no money, no experience, and being like a baby face stepping into the game, right? I made a post on X. I've made over 1,000 cold calls to buy my first business. These 1,000 cold calls included building my board, establishing the relationships with bankers, hooking up with law firms and accounting firms to do our back end work, and ultimately finding the businesses. Right, like I say 1,000 plus, but I think including emails, including just reaching out via LinkedIn, whatever. I think I've just made thousands and thousands of outreaches before I even landed my first success. Even before buying this first clinic that we did, we were looking at, I think we looked at three, four, five deals. I can't even remember. Three, four, five businesses before actually buying one. So we had a few deals fall through. Like, I spent time and effort looking at their numbers, meeting the people, interviewing staff, and ultimately not being able to buy a business. So cold calls, outreach, and things that just fall through the gaps, and like spending all the time and effort and not getting any reward out of it.
And you'd mentioned that you had some healthy inner dialogue. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so making those cold calls and having experiencing failures, like just constantly grinding. I don't think I don't think I would have been able to. There were so many times where I felt like quitting. I felt like, is this even the right thing? Like I know this is the industry, the end goal, where I want to be. I know that's what I'm passionate about. That's what I'm working for, but it's just not working out. Like I'm doing all this work and I'm not getting anything. And keep in mind, I was
Yeah.
unemployed, right? Like I put everything aside. I quit my job. Um, but yeah, just developing that internal dialogue. Like I'm very fortunate to have had my partner. She kept me on track. Yeah, so many times where I felt like quitting and just thinking like maybe I'm not cut out for this. She's helped me keep my head on straight and just said, babe, like this is what you're doing. Like you made a decision like months ago, quite some time ago to do this. You can stick through this. Like you are experiencing failures now, but ultimately you're gonna see like you see the light. It's just a little bit far. You just got to keep going. Um, so yeah, the support network around myself, like having the board as well, that helped. Like the people around me, that was very important to keeping my own dialogue, alive, keeping that fire going, and just ultimately waking up every morning saying, "All right, let's do it."
Because that's less than like 0.01%. You're talking about thousands of calls to get that one company that goes through.
Yeah,
I mean, those odds are pretty grueling. And yet here you are smiling on the other side. That's incredible. So, what does that do for you, knowing that that's what it took and that's what you did, and here you are? Are you thinking like sky's the limit? Are you setting like new goals that seem impossible?
exactly. Like I believe I can achieve anything now. I guess I've always been like that. I've always been very against the grain, and yeah, I've grown up my whole life with my mum telling me how stubborn and ignorant and how bloody hard I was to raise. And I've always been headstrong, and I guess climbing that first big mountain and reaching the top and being able to ride the slope down, it really proves to myself like, hey, if I can climb this mountain, there's no other mountain that I can't climb. So definitely.
Are you familiar with the search fund community or buy then build, or like what resources did you tap into when you decided that you wanted to acquire a company?
One key person, I guess, two key people that really ignited my entrepreneurial journey, and just to say, like, fuck it, let's go for something big. Dan Peña and Dan Lok. Have you ever heard of them?
I want to say the names ring a bell, but I can't place them right now. So let's say no.
So Dan Peña, he's now known as the Trillion Dollar Man. He teaches acquisition. So I spent a lot of
Okay,
time just researching his material. Um, and Dan Lok teaches a lot about like high income skills, high ticket closing, and just I guess developing that mindset to dream big and chase it.
that's great. Yeah, I thought maybe you'd say like acquisition.com, or like buy then build, because I came at that through search funds, which are like maybe micro private equity or something, where similar to what you did actually. There's a few different models where you can have people back you and financially and intellectually, um, to buy and successfully run, hopefully, and then sell perhaps a company.
Yeah, I know in over in the States and Canada, acquisitions and I guess financing for business, it's a lot more not even common, but like it's a lot more common than here in Australia. Like everyone I talk to, they're just like, oh, I've never heard of buying businesses. Like I've never heard of doing that. It's always starting a business, right? Or getting
Mm,
in on someone else's business and becoming a partner or something. It's not very
yeah.
common at all, I guess, across the globe to even consider buying a business, especially without your own money. But I know in the States there's so I'm not familiar with what you're talking about with state fund and what is it, buy and build? Like what?
Oh, that was a book, Buy Then Build. It's one of a popular book in the search fund space, or people looking to do things similar to what you did.
Right. Okay. Okay.
It's making an argument basically because a lot of the the startup looks sexy, and just inventing something that's not there and then making a success out of it, but it's really really hard. I mean, the variables are innumerable, and I forget the percentage, but let's say 90% maybe fail, and the 10% that survive doesn't mean that they're all thriving. So the ones you read about may seem like success is guaranteed, but it's all but. And then the book Buy Then Build, many others in the search fund space point out that actually acquiring an existing and healthy company that's weathered a few recessions, perhaps already has product market fit, already has skilled employees, with the advisors behind you and the investors behind you, a lot of odds are in your favor. A lot of things are going for you, so that has a higher probability of success. And there's the great wealth transfer with the baby boomers retiring. Not all of those things are going to get scooped up. Not all of those businesses are going to get scooped up by private equity. So with people coming out of school and people maybe pivoting mid-career or something, there could be a good nexus of good talent and good companies that need good capital, and so that was kind of the gist behind it, and then how to do it. So that book's Buy Then Build. There's a couple talking about the search fund models and some of them, like how it's been evolving and stuff. But it started in 1984 in Stanford, and then it was largely in the States for a couple decades, over in Harvard, MIT, some of the top schools, I think Cambridge, ESA, and Spain a little bit later. Came to Canada, I believe, like 2015 or so, and I think Australia soon thereafter. I'm not sure exactly the dates, but now it's pretty global. There's Search Fund in New Zealand. There's a meetup in Australia. I'm not sure how many years they've been doing it, but it is starting to get more popular now. So it's kind of exciting to see that model spread. And what I like about it too is it kind of connects the generations,
Yes.
because it's kind of like all hands on deck, and it goes back to kind of the communal, gathering around the campfire way that we used to live.
Yeah, I'll have to look into it. Yeah, because I haven't heard too much about it in Australia in terms of individuals doing it. I know like Australia is there's so many monopoly companies, right? Like we have two big supermarket brands, we have four big bank brands, and when most people from the States or Europe they hear, oh, you only have four banks. Like in the States, I'm pretty sure there's like hundreds of different banks, right? Like local banks, regional banks, privately owned banks, and ultimately the big banks. Whereas in Australia, there's the four big banks, there's a handful of private little banks that are opening up, and most other offshoot brands are owned by the big four. That we're a huge monopoly and private equity owned country.
Okay, okay. Well, that said, have you thought about acquiring abroad as well as you start to grow your empire?
I've definitely considered it, but yeah, yeah, I like to instinctually do a lot of things. So I have to like gather myself and focus. So yes, down the road, I'll definitely look into it a little bit more and consider it. But otherwise, I want to focus on Australia.
Yeah, fair enough. So, how many companies have you acquired so far?
Well, we started just under 2 years ago. So we've started with acquiring that first clinic. So only one right now, but I've got a few deals on the boil.
And do you have like a goal in mind? Like you mentioned, you want to go nationwide. Is there a certain number that you're looking to acquire, or just as much as possible?
Yeah, as much as possible, but in terms of a number, I'd like to go minimum of 100.
Wow. Okay. You don't do things by half measure.
No, hundreds or like just starting with 100. Even when I was like first starting out, I was like, oh, maybe I should lower that goal. But why not? Why not dream big?
Why not? Indeed. I mean, I guess now you know how it works. You've gone
Yeah,
through the fire, and so it's just like rinse and repeat and iterate a little bit, I
exactly,
suppose.
exactly.
So, what does your partner think now?
She she's obviously impressed and proud, and yeah, I guess she's like a battle partner. So she's not just gonna say, "Oh, good job, pat on the back, let's chill." She's keep going. Like you're doing
You're like
so
only
well.
100 companies, should be 1,000 minimum.
That probably not pushing me that hard, but yeah, as I say, she keeps my head on track.
2+ years in, as a business owner, is it like what's the work life? Is it balanced? Is it like when's the last time you had a holiday?
Well, we just came back from Vietnam about a week ago. We were in Vietnam
Okay.
for close to 3 weeks. That was that. Yeah, that was 90% holiday and still 10% some work. So I guess to answer the question, we as a business owner doing what I'm doing, there really is no
Uh,
such thing as work-life balance. Like the work will never escape, or you can never escape the work. It's just a part of life. So I think it's a matter of priorities, priority management, as opposed to trying to separate work and life. I think
yeah.
I think people who are trying to separate the work and life might as well just go for either a solopreneur type business or work a 9 to 5. That's the only way you're ever going to separate work and life. But if you want to get into business, you want to make lots of money, you want to make lots of impact, then I don't think you can ever really escape it.
Since you're the boss, how like who are you comparing yourself to? Like how do you know how well you're doing?
I guess there's an element of the role models. Like I mean, yeah, I like to role model off the big guys. One my favorite is Steve Jobs. Um, and I guess just it's like a balance of being grateful for what I have, but also not settling for less. Like I'm never really satisfied with what I've done. Um, there's always like more I can achieve. So I don't want to turn all dark, but like yeah, I don't think there's really a stop. Like even if I was to acquire a $1 billion company and start making hundreds of millions coming into my bank account and through like being able to give it to my family, like I don't think I'll stop there. I don't think I'll be satisfied with that. I think there's always another
Yeah,
million
yeah, yeah. Other planets to buy companies on. Why
to
stop with Earth alone? No, but I mean, I think that's cool. I think that's greite. There is no upper bound. I think it's just a matter of, do you have it all kind of working as you rise? And it seems like you've got a good partner. You're in good with your health and stuff, and you just got to find that balance and then just keep going. I was talking to a friend a while back. Like I used to look at CEOs as like superheroes. Like they must just be a different breed. You know, and then as I started to learn a little bit about like, talking to more CEOs and, some of them have been CEOs for like a couple of decades and they're like, they still go through like imposter syndrome and they're still like, just trying to like learn and keep up and stuff. And I started to realize they just got comfortable with the chaos.
yeah,
And it's just a matter of like, I have 1,000 hours worth of work to do in a 24-hour day, and I need 6 hours of sleep. So work back from that. And so you've got to plug in like the talent. You've got to get like, okay, I need this many people that know this many skills, and that even that is too much work for me. So I need this person that can like do that. It's just a matter of like putting in the pieces and working it out. It's actually pretty amazing because it's like puzzles and patterns. And of course, there's like skills that you're developing along the way. But even that is like tracking, and it's like a game too, because like you could think, okay, there's 100 skills that you could learn to be competitive in your field, there's not enough time to learn all of them. So it's like, what are the highest priority skills? Maybe someone else is running just a slightly different strategy, and your strategy would have went out except for this like black sheep. I mean, what's it called? Black swan variable. And then all of a sudden, their strategy is the winning strategy. But then your strategy comes in 2027. All that stuff is like, just wild when you think about it. And it's just a matter of like adapting and pivoting at the right time. It's really kind of fun, but it's also there's no end. And I've kind of I wonder like how do you delineate like I'm gonna watch a movie with my partner, or I'm gonna go to Vietnam and like only work 10% of the time. Do you have like a list of like those are the 5 things I had to tick off and now I'm good, or do you just say that's the clock and I'm done?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's I like the fact that I like what you mentioned about being comfortable with the chaos and yeah, 1,000 hours worth of work to do, but only 18 hours you can be awake for the day to do it. Um, I think it's a constant struggle. Like sometimes I feel like I'm just so overwhelmed. I need to keep going. I can't rest. And then some days I'm just like, okay, no, just these are the 5 things. I just need to like recalibrate. And I like to put 3 to 5 tasks that are key for the day and what's practically accomplishable or achievable for that day. And everything else just look. I'm only one person. My team can only do so much as well. Um, so yeah, I like to just go 3 to 5 things, get it done for the day, on to the next. Once you do the 3 5 things, I try not to do more, and I aim. Actually, now I'm actually trying to focus on giving my partner more time, like reaching out to my friends. I guess living a life beyond business. So yeah, 3 to 5 core things, and then making the effort to make time for friends and family.
Yeah, that sounds great. And it's funny, like you can really try to like biohack like all these growth strategies of trying to fit in as much, but sometimes I find you just have to let go.
Yes.
And when you go play and just go do something else, like your unconscious or your mind behind the scenes is like still working the problems and stuff, and then you come back and it's like further along than you ever could have done consciously focusing on it. And it's like part of this balance that's kind of like well, like breathing in and breathing out. It's like it's just kind of like focusing and not focusing, and you go through these cycles, and it's just a matter of kind of doing the best you can, and hopefully enjoying the process.
Yeah, so with the fact that you've spoken to so many, I guess, business leaders, and you've come across like I guess you find these general patterns, right? Do you find that most CEOs and executives, they make the time to play, they make the time to unwind, but even during that time, the clock is still going, like the gears are still grinding, and they're still figuring out the problems and like keeping it in a compartment, parking it, and as soon as it's back to work, it's like boom, they can pull it out of the box and apply it. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I certainly wouldn't say they're all cut from the same cloth. I think there is a large difference depending on like personality
Mm.
type, how they kind of deal with it. Some people present is really kind of relaxed, but they're actually like hyper focused, and some people just leave it behind them and they're just completely like they'll just go to sleep and forget, or go golfing or whatever. And some people just take it with them and everything is like sandwiched together and mixed, like there's just constantly living like multiple layers of life simultaneously. So yeah, I don't think there's like a one size fits all, but the one thing that is consistent between them, I would say, is that they figured out the model that works for them, because it is you have to do it consistently. Like consistency is key. You have to be there for the long haul and deal with a lot of unknowns. And I was going to ask you, like, what have you found so far? What has been most challenging for you with owning and operating a business?
It's definitely the people. Like, I think leadership is so multifaceted. There's so many layers to it. Um, having people follow you and having people stick by you, it's it's tougher than what I imagined. Um, because everyone's looking for the same thing, yet different things at the same time. Like everyone wants money,
Yeah.
everyone wants security, everyone wants to work in a good environment, but at the same time, that looks different for everyone. And just really, like I guess, being so young and a lot of like my board are all could either be my parents or my grandparents. The people who work for me are either the same age as me or could be my parent. So yeah, uh, yeah, it's just tough trying to, I guess, be that senior person when they're either the same age as me or older than me. Um, and I come from a kind of mixture of um, parenthood and I guess seniors in my childhood. There's a big half of don't speak until you're spoken to, like be quiet, listen to the elders, respect your elders, and there was a big element of like, hey, you got to speak up. We enjoy like yeah, so like, but I think just I gravitate towards more the don't speak until you're spoken to, be a quiet kid, be a good kid, listen, respect your elders. So it's been tough for me to step out of that shell and actually be able to tell these people what to do, how I want them to do things, and especially when it comes to the tougher conversations, and even just like little things about, hey, you're late, hey, you didn't do this task that I assigned, hey, this wasn't done right, hey, I didn't like the way you spoke to that person, and then ultimately I guess the development side of things, like people don't most people end up staying where they're standing for a long time, but I think a lot of people are looking for the next step. They're looking for the role model to go for, and it's just been tough trying to find that development for people.
How have you gone about your own kind of leadership development with managing teams being relatively young?
The first thing that comes to my mind is just to be like genuine and upfront about what I'm trying to achieve, the people I want around me. Um, yeah, just like I want passionate people, people who care about what they do, people who care about other people who want better. If you're not, if you don't want that, then yeah, the door's that way. Like I'm not stopping anyone, not stopping anyone from going. I would love for you to stay. I love you. I love your energy. Just yeah, if you don't want to walk the same path, then you can leave. And I think that's one of the big tough things that I've had to come to terms with. Like if I want to get to 100 plus clinics, I'm going to have to deal with a lot of people. And not everyone's going to like me. Not everyone's going to want to walk the same path as me. And just being able to let go, even though I've poured so much love, energy, and effort into a person.
Yeah, yeah. What's the expression? Like just like not holding on to the outcome or something like that. Like just being in the present. And one thing I struggle with is having an assumption for how someone perceives me and then kind of acting accordingly. It's almost like then we have different scripts to the same movie, rather than just you know being present and just letting them think whatever they want to think. And sometimes you could have a bad like conversation or something with one person, and then maybe you could assume, like, let's say for example, someone says, "Hey, baby face, like you don't know enough to boss me around" or something, and then you could take that. I'm not saying you do, but I've done this, if I'm being fully honest, and then take that to someone else and assume that they would think the same thing of me when it was really just one person, and so that I'm not being fair to the second person. So that's also something that I think, maybe all to different extents need to be aware of.
Yeah, I think it's just part of human nature. Like, yeah, I come from a sales and marketing background, so like I see most things like sales. And
Uh,
yeah, what is the toughest thing that people come across in sales? It's the objections, right? Like when people say, "Oh, nah, price is too high." "Oh, nah, you don't know enough." Like it's just being able to handle the objections and ideally being able to handle the objections before they even come up. Which is something like I teach with my marketing and coaching. Like I'll teach how to present your product or service or what you're trying to pitch in a way that already handles all the questions and misconceptions and the myths behind it. So like with the baby face and being young thing, like um, like building my board. Like one of the first things I actually said to people was, "Hey, look, I know I'm young, I know I'm inexperienced, I know I don't know a lot of things, but this is why I'm building a board. This is why I'm doing X, Y, Z." And I feel like when you can handle the objections and misconceptions, and you come across a lot more professional, you come across very well prepared, and people respect that as opposed to what you know. They respect, okay, this guy's putting in the work. This guy understands me.
Well said. Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. And I think that really makes you unstoppable when you are authentic, confident, and self-aware and humble. Like those four things, and then like reaching out, asking for help, knowing who to ask for help. Yeah, you've sounds like you've got great alignment there. Um, and like, what what are some good books that you've read?
What are some good books? The books that one book that I'm almost finished reading is Genghis Khan and the Making of the Modern World. So I
That
like
sounds like it'll be
reading.
helpful for you in acquiring 100 companies.
Yeah, so I like reading about yeah, like the big icons, the and yeah,
Yeah.
in this case, a conqueror. It's fascinating. Like I didn't like this book talks about how Genghis Khan, someone from 800 or so years ago, is still making such a big impact on our world today, and how most things that we have, most things we experience, most cultures and structures were established during that time by this man and by his dynasty.
Wow, because his dynasty was only about, was it 50 years or so
Yeah,
before it split into the different khanates?
yeah. So like it wasn't like he's just one man, right? So he and I'm pretty sure he died like 60, like close to 70 years old. So he didn't
Okay.
Yeah, he wasn't. It's not like he was an eternal god or something that just managed to conquer all these lands. Like he did it in a, I guess, relatively short amount of time for based on what was accomplished. Um, and and yeah, just the trickle down effect from his family, from the teachings, from what they were able to connect from east to west, from north to south. Um, yeah, just so much accomplished because of the networks and the relationships and the structures he built. Not necessarily because of him, but what he built through other people.
Yeah. Was Kublai Khan his son or his grandson? Do you know?
Yeah, I think it's either his grandson or great grandson, something like that. Yeah.
Because he established the Yuan dynasty in China, right?
I don't. I'm not too sure. There's a. Have you seen Marco Polo on Netflix? That
I did the first season. I don't. I think there's. I only saw the first season.
they cancelled the second season, which I was pretty devastated.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but yeah,
Okay.
Kublai. Yeah, I think Kublai managed to uphold a lot more of the values that Genghis Khan had.
Okay.
From what I can understand, a lot of the values started getting lost through his son, who was apparently liked to indulge in the alcohol and the women and the money. And
Ah,
yeah, so like he's swindled a lot of the wealth away. But I guess with so much wealth, like they didn't really.
a common tale when you read about the super wealthy families within like 3 generations or so. Many of them lose their wealth, so it's really hard to preserve the values and the variables, I guess, that led to the initial building up of the wealth.
Every empire has its downfall.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it kind of makes sense. Like once you're not hungry anymore, it's only common to lose some of that drive. And it's kind of cool because it keeps things moving. Like it keeps the variety going about. Like everyone gets a chance, and you can learn from others, and give it your best shot. And you know I wanted to bring up something you mentioned when you said you took your sales and marketing experience and were using that to guide your path. I think that's really smart. I don't know if you knew that before, or if you just kind of followed your passion as you did when you chose healthcare. But that's another common thread that I saw for successful people is they come at like a certain problem from their personal like lens rather than trying to, oh, this is a, I'm going to acquire a company in healthcare, so I have to approach it this way. You're like, I'm this person, so I'm going to approach it this way and then figure out the rest. Because I think that's like your unique differentiator. Um, and that passion, that authenticity is like the North Star or the trunk of the tree. And then the other branches can like attach to them in a better way, I think.
Yeah, I agree, and that's what I see. That's the thing that I see with going into all these icons, these big names, and these people who have achieved so much. Like Steve Jobs, for example, he was notorious for just going against the grain and doing what he believed was right, what he believed was innovative, and just doing it his way. Um, and I guess this is why I don't necessarily believe in like courses and like in-depth courses and guides and how-tos. Like I believe guides and courses serve as kind of, hey, this is a general way to do things. This is how you can think about things, but I don't necessarily believe in this is step by step you must follow. Uh, I guess this is why I didn't do so well in science, right? Like method, like in science, they talk about a replicatable method that anyone can follow. Like they read it and they can follow it step by step. And I've always been that way. Just you gotta figure out your strengths. Here's the problem. And there's the saying like there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat, right? Like you just choose one that you're good at and get the job done. Like find the problem, find the solution, voila.
So you mentioned Steve Jobs a couple of times. Who are some of your other icons?
Um, yeah, Dan Peña, Dan Lok, I mentioned. The Genghis, yeah, it's a little bit more controversial. Hitler, like I think Hitler was,
Okay.
I think Hitler was one of the, in the last century, one of the best orators and leaders and influencers in our time. He managed to get people to do some really crazy things just through a mission, through purpose, through a story.
That's an amazing observation on your part because I think a lot of people are afraid of, well, we tend to think categorically. We tend to think all good, all bad. It's too hot, let's turn on the air conditioning. It's too cold, let's burn the place on fire. So it's like, it's billions of shades of gray and nuance and stuff. And I feel like to be as intelligent as you can be, it's a matter of recognizing why something was a bad thing, why someone like, what in there is there anything of value, um, and yeah, I mean, you can't argue that there were some unique events surrounding Adolf Hitler. So I haven't heard anyone with the courage to say that there's something that they admire about them or that there's something that they might learn. But yeah, I've heard from others too that he's a really good orator. Supposedly, there's like an AI um, version where it translates the German into English,
Yeah,
so that you can like hear kind of the substance of what he's saying. And I think too, one thing that led to it that we should be careful of as humans is we're very prideful creatures, and shame sucks. And so if if we lose our status and we like become reach too much shame, it's like a nuclear reactor. It reaches that critical mass, and then it's like bah. So yeah, just each of us, check your shame, check all your balances and your levels and stuff, and then hopefully a good order won't make you do things that go beyond the pale. But yeah, interesting. So Genghis Khan and Steve Jobs, Dan Pena, Dan Lok. Yeah, so it sounds like you're set to acquire those 100 companies and then some.
yeah. Look, there's a whole bunch of other names and people that I like to learn from, but ultimately, I like the I like the people who've gone against the grain. and who have made so much success going against the grain.
So, is there anything that we didn't touch on that you wanted to leave us with?
Not particularly. I think we this was a good conversation. I think you've asked some great questions. Got me thinking a little bit about myself and where I am, my thoughts. I guess I'll flick that question back over to you. Like, what are some icons and names that you would say that you hold in very high regard, or what you perhaps lessons that you've learned?
Oh my, the lessons is are many and ongoing. I'll start with the easier question, which are the icons, which are also many, but there are two that were first and are still present, and that's Bruce Lee and my grandma.
Mm,
And both around the time I was 7 years old to really the present. They both left us, but they're interestingly similar in some respects. At least the way that I admired them was similar. Um, so Bruce Lee, as you know, was actually American, but left when he was like one.
yeah.
I think he was born in San Francisco, and then went to Hong Kong, grew up there, and then came back to the States, did his college in Washington's University of Washington, and then went down to Hollywood to share, kung fu and Chinese culture with the Americans and the greater world, and wanted to be a star as well. Faced prejudice because he was
Mm,
Chinese, and the world at that point, or at least that part of the world, wasn't ready for that kind of diversity. And my grandma, um, perhaps in some lens not too dissimilar, was born in Yugoslavia, but has a Croatian identity. And there is like a, I guess, communist socialist type government there. The classifications is always a bit murky. It depends on if you say socialist, people might think of like this type of country, even though it's called socialist. But it was more heavy-handed,
mhm,
where you couldn't criticize the government. And her brother wrote something critical of the government in his diary. And one way that they keep pressured is have citizens kind of tell on each other. They get rewarded. So his friend betrayed him and turned him into the authorities for a reward. And then, as an extra protection, if the family, and you see this also in shame-based cultures, if the family, if anyone in the family does anything quote unquote bad, um, the whole family is blacklisted. And so my grandma qualified for the Helsinki Olympics as a sprinter, but she couldn't go because the family's blacklisted. And then her mom told her, "You have to leave this place. Like, you'll never reach your potential here." So at 19 years of age, she escaped through Italy over to Portugal and landed in Hamilton, Ontario. Couldn't speak English, was picking worms for fishermen in the morning and washing dishes during the day, and picked up English. She was an animator, like she had studied animation and art in Zagreb, Croatia, where she was from. And I'm not sure how many years had passed, but eventually she moved from Hamilton to Toronto, and she won a like an animation festival like award that got the attention of Bill Hanna in Hollywood. Bill Hanna of Hanna Barbera, the studio that made the Flintstones, and he said, "Hey, come down to Hollywood, bring a dozen of your, bring your whole crew or whatever. We'll put you up. I love your work." And so she did. It was like a dream come true. And obviously, she had learned English by that point, got her master's at UCLA, became the first female director, as she said, of animation. Um, I personally haven't verified that, but I believe it's likely true. And then she worked for all the big studios, Universal, Disney, etc. Became a member of the Academy Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, so she's voting on the Academy Awards, and became a professor at Cal Arts, which is a Disney school there, and just really like lived the dream and just didn't let the universe say no. So like Bruce Lee and my grandma both didn't let people stop them, and they both faced prejudice on both sides of the pond. So like my grandma became an enemy of the state for her home, which she loved, but she couldn't go back. And she faced prejudice in her adopted home because she spoke with an accent and didn't know like all the culture and the references and stuff. And at that point, she's a woman like leading, and like you're talking about baby face here, trying to lead people that are twice your age or more. And so you're dealing with these expectations and assumptions. Like I mentioned with the categorical thinking, you're trying to swim outside the lane, you're trying to think outside the box. Like, don't do that. And obviously, some of the worst things in the world come from that, and some of the best things in the world come from that. So how do you cancel? How do you delineate? How do you say as one human being that you know better than the universe? It's like, well, we don't, and we just have to like be honest and transparent and communicate, while at the same time we're status driven, we're competitive, and like there's just so many like variables. And we're, I when I start to think about it, I'm just amazed that we're still around. It's like we're incredibly resilient, and incredibly lucky at the same time. But anyway, those are probably my two top heroes. But certainly, Steve Jobs is interesting, and some of the other names you mentioned. I don't have the courage to say I admire Adolf Hitler's order abilities, but I have to say that if I were to think of present controversial people, I'd probably say Elon Musk. He's got a lot of controversy in some of the ways that he does things. But I like that there is diversity in messaging and ownership. It seems like the other tech platforms think one way, and it's like the black sheep is like X, and I'm kind of I root for the underdog, and I remember I remember when people laughed at him when he said he was going to make electric cars back in the day, and I remember people laughed at him when he said he was going to make rockets. And both of those things, not only did he succeed in doing, but he succeeded in doing them better than anyone ever had, and like beyond imagination of people. Like no one even thought that they'd make self-landing rockets. They just didn't think he'd make a rocket, and no one thought that he was actually making like a technology company and like an AI company when he was making a car. Like all they saw is the car. And so, yeah, I thought it was odd that people are like, how silly of you to buy a social media company. It's like, is this really the craziest thing he's ever done? So yeah, I don't know. I like the outliers. I like the misfits. I think it keeps us all innovating.
Yeah, well, I guess it goes to show we love the drama as humans, and it's funny that you mentioned it's surprising that we're still here. Um, but going back to my first point about, I love what you're doing. You're sharing stories, and our I guess our civilizations have grown and run on stories, and we tend to love the dramatic, inspiring tales of people who are brave enough and willing enough to go against the grain, take the plunge, step into the unknown.
And I mean, I admire what you're doing. I think it's amazing. I never, you know, I never in my wildest dreams thought of owning a company when I was like 23, 24. So, good on you, and wish you the best of success. Keep doing what you're doing. And is there anywhere that like you'd like to direct people to like to check out what who you are and what you're doing?
Yeah, look, I'm still pretty new to social media, but otherwise, my main platform that I'm really going in on is X. So the Josh Lee, I believe, Josh Lee, Li. So that's the primary one that I'm on right now. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Great. Well, yeah, thanks, Josh. It's a real pleasure chatting with you. And yeah, you shared some really interesting insights on the journey for anyone looking to acquire a company of any age.
I appreciate it, man. We'll keep in touch.